The purpose of this video is to discuss some ideas for teachers to help their students capture information effectively. The ideas apply to all students, but there are just a few places where specific information is relevant to dyslexic SPLD students. The students themselves can use the ideas in this video to apply to many different mental processing of information. I'm going to be covering some ideas about working memory, in particular the capacity of working memory and how linking information together increases that. Then there are 4 choices of methods for linking that I want to cover. I think it's important that teachers know something about the way in which the senses disconnect, or in ways in which the physical sense can really dominate and have an effect on the way people are recalling information. Student agency is a theme that I'm very keen on, so I'm going to cover that. There is a process called reframing, which I'm going to invite you to engage in, and which is part of all the way in which I think teachers can help students to capture information effectively. I want to go over how this video is an example of all the things that I'm talking about, and then I will have a summary of the ideas right at the end. So I've done a video about the capacity of working memory, which goes into more detail than I'm going to cover here. For the purposes of this video, the important ideas are that the capacity of working memory is contained in 4 chunks, so that all of us, put information into a chunk so long as there are strong links between the various pieces of information that we are putting into that chunk. When there is a weak link in the information, then a new chunk is used until all 4 are filled up. So you have a situation like this, where you've got 4 different chunks of working memory, and each one of them is containing information that is linked together, but there is a weak link between them. Now, once all 4 have been used up, then what happens to some more incoming information? It doesn't get added to what's already there. The new information coming in knocks out the information that was in one of the chunks. So that information that was there is no longer available to working memory to process. And one of the ways you can see the validity of these 4 chunks, I think, is the way in which bank card numbers are given to us in groups of 4 numbers, because there's often no immediate link between those 4 numbers in a group. So you read the 4, use them, read the next 4, use them, and so on. So often information is grouped in this sort of way, and that's because our working memories have these 4 individual chunks. So I would like to give you the opportunity of seeing this in practice. This exercise is really well done when you've got a group of people. So if you're watching the video on your own, then I hope you would at some stage take the opportunity of doing it with a group of friends or a group of other teachers or colleagues. So the scenario is that you are going to remember 5 items, and you're only going to use your mind, and you're going to link together, and in this particular situation, bananas, screws, sellotape, picture, frame, ice cream. So it might be a situation where you're going out of the house and somebody within your household has said, "Oh, please would you get," but you're in a rush. So you can't grab a piece of paper and a pencil to write them down. You haven't got time to use an electronic device to write them down. You have to use your mind in order to link these things together so that you will remember and bring them back to the household when you come back. So I'm going to give you a minute to work out how you would link these items together. So if you are in a group, pause the video and discuss amongst yourselves the ways in which you linked those 5 items together. And I expect you will find that you used a variety of different ways. So some of the ways that I've heard people explain their ways of doing this is some people visualize the items. Some people make a mnemonic. Some people just verbally repeat them over and over so that they're using verbal rehearsal. Other people weave a story of how they're going to get them. Some people think about the ways in which the person who's asked for the items would be using them. All these sorts of different ways, and many others, you find people are using just to bring to mind and recall 5 different items. The basic question in the activity you've just done is, how did you do it? How were the 5 different objects remembered? And if you had the opportunity to do it in a group, you will have found that people do it in many different ways. And that's really interesting to realize that we do process information in many different several ways. We're linking information together in our own individual way. And it's, as far as using links to improve working memory is concerned, it's knowing what those individual ways are that is important. You can do this exploration in lots of different ways, but one way that's quite good with children is to use Kim's game. And in Kim's game, you have some 20 objects that are going to be named, and then the game is to see who can remember the most once they have been covered over. And of course, the winner is the person who's remembered most, but then we don't go on to say, well, how did you do that remembering? But that's where the interest in making links can grow, and children can start to think about the way they're linking information together. So that's a good way of doing the remembering 5 items exercise with children. In living confidently with specific learning difficulties, there is a mind exercise, Know Your Own Mind, which is exploring the same interest in how minds make links between information. And you get to understand the way in which an individual's mind likes to make connections between information. So you get the same insights that can then be used deliberately for making links to improve working memory capacity. So when it comes to capturing information, my students have taught me that there are 4 ways of linking that are really crucial. There's the visual, the verbal, by doing or using some sort of kinesthetic sense, and by knowing the structure or the reason, framework or rationale before any of the information is received. So the visual and the verbal are 2 ways that are used fairly regularly in education, are known and talked about, and lots of work is done. Using the kinesthetic or the doing route into learning is used in certain subjects, certain practical subjects, in field trips and in experiments. It's not used quite so much in the standard classroom. The structure and the reason and the framework behind what's being learnt is not often seen as a teaching or learning strategy. And if the structure and the rationale is really important to the learner, you can alter the visual and the verbal as much as you like. If that structure is not there, then the person has no way of learning. Now, this is particularly important for dyslexic SBLD people because they don't have minds that are storing the visual and the verbal. This is not true for all of them, but for some of them, if they don't know the structure and the reason and have that solidly in place before they start learning something, then they have no way of capturing the information and letting the mind discover what that structure and that reason is. Because that's what happens for most people. They take the information in, short-term memory, their working memory, can store it for long enough for the mind to realize what the structure and the reason is. But for some dyslexic SBLD people, that simply does not happen. And they must know what that structure and the reason is before they start doing any of the learning. So teachers using all 4 methods in their materials, in their presentation, in their delivery is really important. The other thing that's really important is that teachers make sure students know about the 4 chunks of working memory, that they know that the capacity of working memory is increased by the strength of the links made between different pieces of information coming in, and that there is a choice of 4 different methods for linking information that is coming into the mind so that they have a chance of capturing it, and then knowing that they will be able to fine-tune that information in a way that suits them. Now, this is going to be true for all students. A lot of students who don't have problems will be able to, their minds will do this work for them when the subject is not very difficult. But when the subject becomes challenging, all students need to know this. And working at a sort of beginning stage of learning about a new subject is when, for dyslexic SBLD students, the subject is challenging. So it's just a question of when the challenge really hits in, but all students need to know this. I think it's important for tutors to know that for some people, the attention being paid on visual reception actually shuts down attention to hearing, and vice versa. So I first discovered this when I was at a concert of Handel's Fireworks, and it was an outdoor concert, and there was a beautiful fireworks display while the musicians were playing alongside. And I discovered that I could either look at the fireworks display, in which case I couldn't hear the music, or I could look at the orchestra and listen to music, in which case none of the visual, which I could still see basically through my eyes, but my mind couldn't process what the fireworks were doing. I could either watch the fireworks or I could listen to the music. I couldn't do both. So having discovered that in myself, Then I started talking to my students and in workshops that I was doing and saying, this is something that happened to me, and discovered that other people had discovered this for themselves as well, that this is a phenomenon that happens for some people. So the important thing for teachers is not to assume that when they are talking and doing slides or using visual input, that a student can necessarily take in all that information together. May have to do it separately, or just discuss with students whether this is something that happens to them or not, and then get them to take agency about what happens. The other thing that can happen is with the physical senses. They can dominate what is happening with memory. Alan Baddeley did some experiments with deep sea divers, and they were learning some information and some words under the sea at quite a depth, and then their recall was tested both at the same depth and on land, and it was found that the recall was definitely impacted by the place, and that recall was better in the place that the learning had taken place. So I think that's quite important to realise that there is a way in which the physical situation and what the physical senses are taking in has an impact on the way in which recall works. And it's an everyday experience, isn't it? At you're at the top of the stairs, you know you've got to go downstairs to do something or to pick up something, you get down to the bottom, you can't remember what it was you wanted to do. So you either have to think yourself up to the top of the stairs and what you were doing up there to remember, or you have to go up there and then make some sort of mental adjustment so that by the time you get downstairs again, you will remember. So that's a fairly common experience that people have using the physical senses. And I think it's important for teachers to be aware that these effects can happen. So now I want to look at student agency. I think student agency is really, really important. An agency is the capacity of individuals to have mental power and mental resources to fulfill their potential. And of course, we want all students, learners, people to have that agency. Now, why it's particularly important for SBLD and dyslexic students is that the support networks are not always available. So the support networks are really, really important to assist the learning situation, to give the students the agency that they should have and they could possibly have if learning went right for them. But the support networks are not always there. So agency and confidence allows you to think, I can go into a situation and I can cope with it. I've got the skills I need. I know what my skills are. I know what my capabilities are. If there's something I can't quite do, I've got the confidence to ask for help in the way that I know I need help in that particular situation. But I'm not requiring support networks to be with me all the time. The capacity for agency is something that is really important to dyslexic SBLD students. And one lad I know said, I don't want to be told I'm a valuable person. I want to be told how to do something. So as far as agency is concerned with capturing information, I know this is a repeat of an earlier slide that teachers need to make sure their students know about chunks, that there are 4 of them, that the links between different bits of information materially changes the capacity of working memory. That there are 4 different methods of linking. They might prefer one, but at one stage that their preferred one is not working, so they know that there's another option that they can switch into, and also to know that there is fine-tuning that they will be able to use, and they can explore and what those are. But there are ways in which they can take control of capturing the information, being able to use it, process it, learn from it. It's their agency, and that is so very important. Okay, reframing. So I've been talking for several minutes and giving you a lot of information, and here is what I've covered now. You may be listening to this with a particular purpose, with a particular person in mind, having a particular interest in what's going on. So reframing is a way of creating notes in a way that suits you of the information in this video. So if you were using this process with a student or collection of students, then you've given them some information in their topic and you're giving them time to just reflect on that information and capture it in a way that suits their brains so that they will be able to recall it, use it, process it, learn it effectively in a future time. But just having that pause to do it while the information is still fresh is really a very valuable process. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to reframe the information that I've given you in this video so far. So create notes in a way that suits you of the information that you've been listening to. And the 2 minutes starts now. If you need to take longer, then pause the video and take as much time as you need. Okay, so if we were in a group together, having given you the time to do the reframing, then your options might include making a list, making a mind map, adding diagrams to notes that you had taken while I was talking. You might highlight keywords. You might think about physical keys that you want to add to the information. You might even think about personal associations or stories that were triggered as you heard the information that I was talking about. You might want to add the rationale framework. And if we were in a group, then you would discuss amongst yourselves at this point the different ways in which you had all done that. And you would find that there were lots of different options and some that I haven't even included in this list. And that we think differently. That's so really important, allowing that acknowledgement to be known that people do think differently, whether they're dyslexic or not dyslexic, SBLD or not SBLD. People do think differently. I want to talk about the way this video has been an example of using the 4 different routes into making links. And I want to make the point also that the students are the ones who do the fine tuning. The teachers just use the 4 different routes, and then that invites different minds to use whichever route is most appropriate to them. It's not up to the teachers to do all the fine tuning, but just for the presentation or the materials to actually be opening up those different doors. So looking at the first method that's used, the verbal, and there's 2 ways of spelling oral. So you are listening, I am speaking. There's a text version of what I'm talking about, because there are some people who don't want any visual aids at all. They just need to read through. And then all the slides have got words. So there's many different ways in which the verbal way of making links is amply catered for within this video. So the visual way. So I've used colour to separate ideas and blocks. You can see here I'm separating this list of my sections. It's been separated from the material on a slide by using colour. I've used colour to show where I'm going from one idea to another. I've used a different layout so that everything's not as in one straight line, but visual or whatever method it is for linking that I'm talking about is set to the left, away from the ideas that belong under it. I've used icons. I'm using the arrow to indicate where we've got to. And I've used a static section list of sections. Now this is really important for dyslexic SBLD people, because things that move and are not there for you to come back to and process mean that for some there is no way of knowing where they've got to, what's going on. It's a sort of holding mechanism. It came up when I was actually assessed as being dyslexic, and the person who was assessing me wrote in my report that I would value static material, and it's absolutely right. The way in which things are sort of flashed on and flashed off just doesn't give me enough time to process and hold on to information. So all of those things are important, and there's many more as well. So the way in which this video has used the physical route into remembering is I've given you 2 activities. I gave you the first one, which was remembering 5 items. You did the task. You heard the ideas from others. Well, you would have done if you were in a group. And that's what happens when I'm doing a live situation, live workshop. And that's a key part of the learning experience, is hearing that other people do it so differently. So that was one activity to use the physical. The other activity to use the physical was reframing. Now that reframing you could have done by using visual, verbal or kinesthetic physical ways of doing it as well, but it was a way of allowing you physically to experience the process of reframing. And so you were doing the task and you were using your own preferences, and then in the discussion or in the list that I gave, thinking about, yes, did I use those? Did I not use those? Oh, that's interesting. That's a completely different way of doing it. So that the physical way of engaging with the material was actually included a couple of times in this video. So providing the rationale or the framework. So I gave you the rationale right at the beginning with the first slide in telling you what the purpose of this video is. I gave you the plan, which is this one that I've repeated here, so that, and I've used these icons, which is visual, all through, and the sections being in view as I worked through the video. So that's allowing somebody who works with framework or rationale a way of connecting with where they're getting to, what's happening, what's going on, and allowing them to link in and know where to capture the information that is coming through this video. So there we are. That's how in this video I have used all 4 methods for linking information together. And the reason that it's important for the tutors to use all 4 is that by using them, you allow the students' minds to open at the right place for them to take information in. So you are effectively inviting them to use the methods that will work for their minds. So in summary, I've been talking about the way in which linking information together increases the capacity of working memory. And it's really important for teachers to use 4 particular methods of linking information and presenting information so that students' minds can choose the method that is really strong and effective for them. And teachers need to make their students aware that linking information together increases working memory capacity. You also, as teachers, need to be aware that the visual and the verbal senses can disconnect so that they both don't work together, and also that the physical sense can dominate. And it's useful for students to be aware that these sorts of effects can work as well, so that they are in charge of looking at what's happening in their minds. So students' agency is increased when they are aware that linking is a way of increasing working memory capacity, and they're the ones who then become the agent for checking that their minds are linking stuff together in a way that suits their mind, and that they can use these different methods to improve their mental processing. So what I've been talking about, the way in which working memory capacity is increased, is not just applicable to capturing information. It's applicable for many different mental processes that we use for dealing with information. And the point about talking about it in terms of capturing information is that's the stage at which teachers can have an impact. So for all the other processes, it's students who have the agency. And then when they are capable of using linking like this and of increasing their working memory capacity, they become confident, they are able to use their full potential, and they then contribute to discussions, they contribute to their learning, they contribute in working situations when they leave education, and they are much more capable people in many, many different ways. I gave you the opportunity to experience reframing, which is a process that you can invite your students to do. And in doing that process, they will have the opportunity to explore exactly how their minds like to link information together. Then I went through the ways in which this video is an example of what I've been talking about, of how you can relatively simply use the 4 most important methods as far as capturing information is concerned. On the website dyslexiastrategies.com, there is an accompanying text page which has a text version of this video presentation, because I know that there are some people, and a lot of people, who like to be able to read information and who prefer to have absolutely minimal visual aids. Also on that page are references to further reading in the series Living Confidently with Specific Learning Difficulties, and that extends the information about the capacity of working memory and working effectively with working memory. At the end of the text version, there are a list of videos in this series on this web page, on this website, that relate to the material I've been talking about, and also to videos in the series Living Confidently with Specific Learning Difficulties. Also at the end are references to other people's work. Thank you for watching and listening to this video. I hope you found it useful and that your students will benefit from the information that is in there.